Good evening, everybody. It is Tuesday night. It is 7 o'clock. It is time for our weekly conversations with Commodores, and we have a special guest with us tonight. Number 71, a two-time captain from the late 70s, early 80s, and he also is the current organizer of the Pioneers group, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But guys, I want to welcome Rod Gurley to our show tonight. Good evening, Rod, and thank you for making some time for us tonight. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Guys, Rod came out of Chicago and made his way down south in 78 and played with us as a two-time captain, graduated in 82, ultimately went into education. Now he's happily retired, but he's probably busier now than he's ever been, just knowing him. But Rod has just helped to create such a community of not just players during his years, but many years. In the back half of our conversation tonight, we're going to talk about the Pioneers and what an important group they are to us. But before we do that, Rod, I want to talk about Chicago, the mid 70s, playing sports and growing up. Share a little bit about your childhood. And we know you played football, but did you play other sports as well as a kid?
Yeah. Well, I started school in Chicago, elementary, and in elementary school, I wasn't really cognizant too much of basketball and anything else. We would run track or have races and things like that, play in the playground. But whatever they did in gym in those days is what I did. So we just did kind of routine things, learn how to do tumbling and stuff like that. But in the fourth grade, I moved back to, which is actually my hometown, which is Champaign-Urbana, where I was born.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed in Champaign-Urbana from fourth grade through the ninth grade. Mm-hmm. And there is when I started getting into organized sports in school. We played basketball in elementary. I learned how to play basketball. I didn't know anything, and the kids, taught me how to play because I had a little height and everything. So I got to play center. We had some pretty good teams. Then I got into junior high, and again, we had some pretty good teams doing junior high and basketball. Then we started playing football in the seventh or eighth grade and in junior high. So my junior high was a seventh, eighth, and a ninth grade junior high. And that's when I started playing football and learned how to do that. And I think from the training that we did in basketball, footwork and stuff like that, I was able to move around pretty well and do good. And of course, I was always the biggest guy, so wasn't any problem playing football. But from that point, I moved back to Chicago and started playing at Hyde Park High School in the 10th grade. Mm-hmm. My coach there was Richard Griffith, and he played college football at Tennessee State University with Coach Hubbard Alexander, who was the coach on Vanderbilt's team at the time, and they were like best friends. And so that was how I made my way to Vanderbilt, because them being best friends and my high school coach knowing that I had some talent as a big guy, being able to run and do. So it was kind of like, made to order for me to come to Vanderbilt. I actually did not know anything about Vanderbilt. Mm-hmm. And I really wasn't sold on playing football because at my high school, you had to learn how to fight first and then play football. So I thought, man, when I played in elementary and I played in junior high, I didn't have to fight the whole team. But when I got to Chicago, not being part of the original neighborhood crew, I had to show them that I was tough enough, for the neighborhood first. And once they got that understood, they accepted me in.
Wow. Well, I was curious if you grew up in Champaign-Urbana. Isn't that the home of Illinois? Isn't that where the university?
Yeah, that's where U of I is. Yeah, I was right there.
How'd you get out of Big Ten country? But you just kind of. But why not Tennessee State? But I guess the coach's best friend was on the Vanderbilt staff.
There you go. I had Central State in Wilberforce, Ohio. They were recruiting me, and they had some good athletes there. But my coach kind of kept me, to himself a little bit, and we didn't have the best team or anything, and
Mhm.
Chicago being such a large city, you
Mhm.
know, it takes a lot for it to be seen,
Mhm.
you know, first. But we just had a small team, and we played our hearts out, but we didn't have a giant school or a giant team or a winning team, and I didn't play all of those years, so I didn't
Mhm.
have a great reputation, over 3 or 4 years of being
Right.
there. I actually didn't play my junior year. I came
Oh.
in, I played as a sophomore,
Mhm.
and a coach from Alcorn was on the sideline, and he came over to me during the game, and he was talking to me. He said, "Hey, I see you playing some good defensive tackle. That I think that other team doesn't like to run on your side. They're running it the other way."
Mhm.
And he said, "Are you a junior or a senior?" I said, "Well, I'm a sophomore." Of course, his eyes got really big because I was
Yeah.
big. He was like, "What, a sophomore?" He said, "Did you know you can get a scholarship for playing football?" And I did know that, and and I had planned on going to college, so that always stuck in my mind because he was letting me know, "Hey, I think you got what it takes, especially being
Wow.
a sophomore." But again, I had to do a lot of fighting on my in my neighborhood, and I kind of got more into academics during my junior year, and I kind of left the football alone. I thought it's a little bit much. I'm doing a lot of fighting and stuff, and but I got more and more into academics, and the guys on the football team, they wouldn't let it go. They kept challenging me to come out and daring me to come out and so forth. So I had to come back out just to get into some more fights.
Now, when you were entering your senior year of high school, how tall were you? How much did you weigh?
I was pretty big. I had gotten up to 280 and 90 pounds and everything. And I was 6'4". So I was pretty big for a while, and then I started losing some weight and coming down some, down like 275 and so forth. As time went on, because we had our coach would run us a lot, so I did a lot of running and everything. I
Well,
started
gosh,
started
Rod,
watching what I was
in
eating.
1978, you had to have been one of the bigger players in your entire league, if not the
Yeah,
state.
yeah, I was, yes.
Zach Spratt, he calls you a street fighter and a leader.
Yeah.
So going into your senior year, Coach Griffin gets you on the radar for Vanderbilt. When did you visit Nashville or visit the campus for the first time?
Oh man, I'm trying to think when that was. Because it had to be. I think it must have been after the football season and before December. So when I came, we watched the game. So let's put it like that. When I came down
Okay.
here, I did watch a game. So it was during the football season.
All
But I think our season as far as high school must have been over. And I came down. When I came down, I actually was with a guy named William Hart.
right.
He was the other guy that came down from Chicago. He was a junior college uh, student that had played at my high school at Hyde Park
Mm-hmm.
before, and he had left before I got there.
Mm-hmm.
And he went on and played in junior college, and he was a big, rough, guy and everything. And so they brought him down also, and he signed on at the same time that I did with Vanderbilt. He came in as a junior college, and I came in, as a freshman. But when we came down, it was during the football season for Vanderbilt.
And did you sign, or excuse me, did you enroll in the fall of 78? Is that the
No,
right
no,
year?
no. I came down in '77. So I actually,
I'm sorry, I misspoke. 77.
yeah. I actually started in '77. Yeah.
And Kenny Cole, Kenny Cole says that you're not kidding about being a fighter. Y'all were fighting the offense every day in practice during your freshman fall of
Man, yeah,
77.
Cole, Swindoll, and the freshman guys, man, that we didn't make the traveling squad. Man, we tried to get offense kids some mess on that defense, man. We had Tom Galbeers was was our scout team coach, and he just let us go, man. He'd hold up these cards with a bunch of, T's and O's and this is and some arrows and say, do this. And we just go after first string offense and have a good time. We let them know we were ready to fight anytime they want to think they can push us around.
And he said the Nashville newspaper wrote an article about all those fights. Do you remember that?
Yeah. we got in a few fights. One good thing about Coach Pancos, if you didn't make the traveling squad, he didn't make you run after practice, so we could use all our energy on the scrimmage.
Yeah, I'm sure those first teamers really love that too.
Yeah. When it came time to run, he sent us to the locker room.
In '77, were freshmen allowed to play at that point?
Yes.
I don't know when the rule. What year?
Yes. We had several freshmen that actually did make the traveling squad. I know Charles Edwards did. I think Eddie Hood went some. I can't think all of who did, but we had a few freshmen that actually did play on the go with the traveling squad.
Let me throw this to you and tell me if this registered with you or it wasn't a part of your thought process at the time. You may remember in the fall of '77, two of the captains were Reggie Calvin and Ed Parrish on the team.
Yes.
The fact that those pioneers, those fellas, African-American ball players were of leadership positions, did that register with you? Did that make a difference at all to you? Not in your decision-making to come to Vanderbilt, but the fact that you're on the squad that has African-American ball players as leaders in the SEC in Nashville in the late '70s. Did that mean anything to you?
Well, my high school was all black high school.
Mm-hmm.
And what folks, don't know is Chicago is not a integrated school system. They never were able to bus in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And so you went to the school in the neighborhood that you lived in. Mm-hmm. The neighborhood I lived in was predominantly black. The high school was predominantly black. Mm-hmm. So, I was the captain of my, my junior high teams and everything. And of course, I'm going to a school that's predominantly black. So I got black captains, before I was a senior, then I was a captain at that time. Mm-hmm. What I did not realize was how close 1977 was to 1967. Mm-hmm. So I thought things were a little bit farther along the way. I didn't realize that I was going to be a pioneer, a black pioneer, the first 60 guys to play, or, I didn't realize how many black athletes were not, on these teams that were down here and mm-hmm. so forth. So that wasn't in my vision, that was an issue, or that there was a lack of black ball players on some of the teams at that time. But I did get a message from one of the guys that worked in the high rise that I lived in, that knew about Perry Wallace, and he asked me. He said, "I heard you have got a scholarship from Vanderbilt," and I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I didn't know that they let black kids go to that school, because I used to live down there, and that school was all white." And I'm thinking, well, it's 1977. You're probably thinking back in the 50s or something, Mm-hmm. But he said, well, that's that school where they didn't let that black guy dunk the basketball. And of course, I really didn't know what he was talking about, but he was talking about Perry Wallace, and that they had outlawed dunking in college or in the SEC because of Perry Wallace dunking. And
well, it predates him, I think.
Yeah. But I know
it's actually Kareem or Lou Alcindor rule. But go ahead.
Yeah, so he was talking about that and everything, and so I just thought, well, maybe he was thinking decades earlier or something, Mm-hmm. So when I got down here, I saw a number of black athletes here. So when I was in elementary school and in junior high, I was only one of 3 black guys on my team, and they did, bus black kids, across the city to integrate.
Mhm.
So, you know, it was kind of a 70-30 ratio. So when I was in elementary in Chicago, I was in Hyde Park. I was in the Hyde Park area also near the University of Chicago. So both times I was near the University of Chicago, but when I was in elementary, I was in very mixed neighborhood with a lot of the college people there. And so my elementary school was integrated because the neighborhood was integrated.
Sure.
You know, so it goes by the neighborhood that you live in.
Sure.
So I had been, you know, in all scenarios, but actually being in a school that was predominantly black was a little off for me. You know, when I got to high school, because the rest of the time I had been in schools that had a mixed cultures.
So when you get to Vanderbilt, there's a handful of black athletes on the roster, not a ton, but did that have any impact on your thought process, or you just kind of used to it given what you just explained from childhood?
Well, like I'm saying, I was used to it, and I expected there was going to be, you know, a mixed, you know, group of guys there, you know. So I, I, uh, I wasn't surprised that there was a lack of black athletes because we had a lot of good black athletes there. So, you know, it didn't seem like we had any shortage of black athletes, and they were all good. I looked up to them just like I looked up to, you know, some of the other guys. But, you know, you got Dennis Harrison and Ronald Hale, the defensive backs, Reggie, Bugs Jordan, Ronnie Myrick, you know. So we had quite a few black athletes there, you know. But I got there in '77, and it would have been a different experience had I gotten there maybe 4 or 5 years earlier. You see, so by the time I was there, we had you know, still guys on the team who had came in, and you know, some still from '74, but we had '75, '76. You know, in '77. So we had a fair amount of athletes there. You know,
And they were contributing on the field as well, not
exactly,
just filling up the
exactly.
roster. But Rod, we got to pause for a second because Jim Arnold says to tell you hello.
Hey, Jim.
I saw Jim on Friday night. Had a good time chatting with him. Terry Potter's in the house. We got
Yeah,
Marshall Cheatham is in the house.
yeah.
Gary Clark is with us. Hey, fellas, thank you for joining Rod Gurley this evening on Conversations with Commodores.
Yeah, Terry Potter came in with in my group also and everything. Yeah, yeah. They had him out there running that ball early on too. Potter was a workhorse.
Cheat says, "What's up, Southside?"
Yeah, I was one of the first two to come down from Chicago, and then we had another three come down, and Marshall was one of those guys, Mark Brown, and then Eugene Shaw.
Mm-hmm. Rod, coming from Chicago to Nashville, that's a big culture change coming from one of the biggest cities in the country to a then kind of small, sleepy southern town set in its ways. The transition for you culturally, socially, academically, athletically, when did you find your footing? When did you get comfortable with those roles and find your place, so to speak, where you knew you were going to be making your mark? Was it early on, or did it take a while?
No, it didn't. It didn't. I didn't have really any problems because of the versatility of, you know, my background. Like I said, going to elementary school, and my elementary school was had just been established. It was named Shoesmith after some. I had Jewish teachers. I had, you know, white, Asian kids that I grew up with and was in the neighborhood with and going to school with. The Hyde Park area being close to the University of Chicago, you had mixed couples. You had people from different parts of the country. Muhammad Ali even lived just a few blocks down from where I lived, you know, in elementary. And you'd come up to our school and talk. When I went back to Champaign, that was a small town compared to Chicago. You know, we watched TV until like 11 o'clock, and then you just got the planes flying and the national anthem, and that was it. You know, Chicago, I watched TV all night long, the late show, the late late show, the late 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 show, and then the early late show. Then it just went right into the next morning.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, so I was used to being in a small city. Also, um, I had come. My family is my mother's family is from West Tennessee, from Huntington, Carroll County.
Mhm.
So I was coming down to Tennessee all my life, and
Okay.
in towns that didn't even have a stoplight.
Right, right.
Where my relatives lived and everything. So that didn't bother me. I already grew up fishing, eating Southern food. Because I was first generation being born in the North, actually. So
Mhm.
my mom and all her sisters and everything, they were born in Tennessee. My name comes from Huntsville, Alabama, Gurley, Alabama.
Gurley, Alabama. I had no
Yeah,
idea.
yeah,
That's
that's where my name comes from. I got relatives right there, right there in Huntsville that grew up right there in Gurley, Alabama. So
I got it.
I used to come down here when I was young, and that's the first time I run into getting stung by bees. I was running up down one of the mountains down there in Gurley, and stepped on the yellow jackets.
All right, I got to ask Kenny Cole, have you spent much time in the Huntsville area in Gurley, Alabama? Rod, what about that humidity? Did it get to you, or were you? I mean, I know you've been coming down as a kid, but you hadn't been training as an SEC athlete.
No, no, yeah. Now that was that was tough. Being in that heat. The first game I played in was in Arkansas, and it was rough. It was a humid night, and I mean there was no air to be had, and all you had was just this humidity, sweat, coming right
Yeah,
out the air on
that
you.
guys. For those who don't know, that was opening game 1978, number two ranked
Yeah, Lou
Arkansas.
Holtz. Yeah, against Lou Holtz, Arkansas.
Yep, you sure did. That led off the season in 1978. And Rod, what was it that at that time you're a sophomore academically? I guess you're a redshirt freshman athletically.
Yeah.
What was it that you enjoy? What was it that was good about for you being a Vanderbilt student athlete that time?
Well, my mother and my people knew a lot more about Vanderbilt. As I said, I did not know.
Mm-hmm.
When Vanderbilt came knocking at the door, and my mother's like, Vanderbilt, and her eyes got really big, and she was like, Vanderbilt, okay. And I'm thinking, okay, it's just a school,
Right.
but she knew what Vanderbilt was, and
Mm-hmm.
that was impressing her. And I was very much into getting an academic, uh, you know, school, and doing what I needed to do to get the education. And playing football was a means to get the education, but I did like playing football, and I liked the camaraderie and everything. And I had been the captain on my teams before, so where I came from, you fought your way to the top, and that's the way that we did. You get out there and you play hard. And that's how we were trained to play. Like I said, my coach went to Tennessee State, and that's kind of how he trained us. Like we were at Tennessee State. We had it pretty rough. As far as being football players. Where I come from, you play. It might be cold. You have to play when it's really cold, and if you mess up, where I come from during that time period, the coaches had a paddle. You messed up a little bit too much out there on that field or acted up, you can get 3 or 4 licks right there on the field with a paddle. So
Wow, on the field. Wow.
right then and there. So you had to be tough in a lot of ways.
Well, playing and going to school at Vanderbilt at the time, I'm sure we talked about the transition part, but academically, we all know Vanderbilt's no joke. You can't just take underwater basket weaving or whatever and get by.
Ooh.
Were you comfortable in all these, academically by the time you were a sophomore, a redshirt freshman in the fall of 78? Were you still getting your feet under you, so to speak, or were you finding a stride? Were you
Well,
finding
I knew that I better sit up front and pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
go to class. So I didn't shirk off my responsibilities about going to class. I paid attention, and I could tell, there were kids that were at Vanderbilt that had some massive skills, that were far advanced in certain ways academically. But I didn't let that intimidate me any, because your first year you're taking one-on-one freshman kind of classes anyway.
Right.
And so
Right.
I was learning, well, what is this? How you write a paper, and all of those things. And the professors were pretty good at making sure that you did learn these skills, early on, if you didn't have them, automatically coming from some private prep school or something like that, where you might have advanced placement classes and so forth. But yeah, I did pretty good for, just like I said, paying attention, making sure that I studied hard for the test. I spent a lot of time at night studying and burning, that midnight oil, as they say, getting to practice kind of tired. But that was a good thing, like I said, because at least Coach Pancos didn't make us run after practice. So all we had to do was get there, practice hard, follow directions, and then we can get out the field. So we weren't quite as worn out as the guys that were on the traveling squad and playing the games.
Rod, we got Mark Matlock in the house tonight. Says to tell you hello.
All right, yeah. Mark was here last early this month, and when we had our gathering and for the Pioneers.
We also got the mayor of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, Joe Peebles, is in the house. Hey, Joe, good to see you,
Joe
buddy.
Peebles.
Joe Peebles, one of my teammates. Rod, let's kind of move forward a little bit. You play season 78, 79, but then your fourth year, you're honored with being named one of the captains. And it's not your final season. In fact, you were voted 2 years in a row as captain, which to me is one of the ultimate honors that a player can have in a team sport. And I know you don't like to brag on yourself, but dadgummit, this is the time to talk about it, because that's a hell of an honor, 2-year captain. And it's based on leadership. It's based on so many things. But when you were first named captain, how did that impact you at the time?
Well, I think that, there was times I think they would ask the team maybe to choose the captain, when it got down to the latter part of the season. But most of the guys that were there knew that I was fighting through a lot of, adversity. When we played against Lou Holtz and Arkansas, I actually sprained both my ankles in the very first game that I ever played.
Oh, wow.
And, by the time, the next game, Air Force, I was just hobbling. I never had to play with 2 sprained ankles. I don't even think I ever played with 1 sprained ankle. So, I learned real quick, you don't get to rest when you get hurt in college ball. You gotta get taped up and keep on playing. So I had to learn how to play with these, with these banged up ankles. And, by the time that year was over, I was, doing pretty good. And then came into my next year at practice. So, the coaches ran a bad play on me and did a crackback block on me in practice a week before the first game.
Oh, my.
So they tore my knee up pretty bad. So I went in again into the first game, not being able to show my potential or help the team out as much as I wanted to. Again, they were taping me up. I had to learn how to play with this banged up knee, Then we get to the next, year.
1980.
Yeah, and the guys, by that time I was taking, going out for some of the tosses, and I was, being captain for the game, where I would, have to communicate with the officials and decide if we were going to take a penalty or not, or what we were going to do. They used to do that back then. So I spent a
little different now, isn't it?
Yeah. I see now it's different. I said, but I liked doing that. So yeah, I would talk with the officials and decide if we were going to take the penalty or whatever. Coach, of course, the coach would be yelling from the sideline, "Take the penalty, Ron!"
Right, right. Well, it's
You know,
Rod, that year it's you, Keith Phillips, and Phil Swindoll are the three captains, and this is
right,
your second season under Coach McIntyre.
right,
You had started your first 2 years with Pancoast.
77 and 78 with Pancoast,
Mm-hmm.
and then Coach McIntyre came in, and yeah, so they named me one of the captains at the end of that 1980. And I don't know, at that time I'd actually had a broken wrist for a year or two that I didn't talk about too much, but it had been broken in a practice, a couple of years earlier, and bone disintegrated in there. And
Oh my.
so, by that time, I had all these mounting injuries, and I really didn't know if I would actually be able to play again the next season, because I was going to need to have a surgery on the wrist and have a bone graft and so forth. My knee was banged up pretty bad, and these ankles were, so I spent a lot of time in treatment.
You're the bionic man is what it's starting to sound like. By the time the 1980, your senior year, your fifth year rolled around, and that's where I want to head to. That year, Rod, it's you, Ken Hammond, and Andrew Coleman are the captains. And one of the unique things about opening the 1981 season is the stadium had been updated for the first time, I think, in 60 years.
Yeah.
And had that first game against Maryland and I think Boomer Esiason.
Yes.
Take us to that game, because that was a memorable game for Vanderbilt.
Well, the actual facts were that I was not on the team in the spring of that year because I didn't think I would be able to play. I had a cast on for 5 months. I stayed there at school during the summertime, and I got the cast off, and I started working out and everything, and we got really close to the season, and Ken Hammond busted in my dorm room and looked at me and said, "Gurley, you're going to play. Go over and tell the coach you're going to play. And I've already talked to the coach, and you're going to play." So I'm like, okay, because I was very undecided, as to whether or not I would come back and ask them if I could, play that year or not, or if I would even come back and play, because like I said, I've been playing with so many injuries for so long. But I did watch them renovate that stadium, and I thought, man, I done put a lot of years in here, and now they renovate this stadium, and I'm not going to get to play it, And it was looking kind of good. So after Kevin came to my room and kind of let me know, I said, well, that's one guy I definitely don't want to get into any fights with. So I'd rather fight the rest of all the rest of the team than have to get in a fight with him. So I went over and I had a serious conversation with Coach McIntyre, and he said, "Well, Gurley, I tell you the truth, he did the same thing to me." So I said, "I think we're both in the same position. It's either you play or one or two of us go out to fight Ken Hammond." So
I think you chose wisely.
Yeah, so he said, "Well, look, I gotta check with the seniors, see if they, are going to go for that, and we'll see what happens." And so he talked with the seniors. They okayed me to come back and play, and we started off that game against against Maryland. I was very doubtful. I didn't even know if I would even be starting that. To be truthful, all of my injuries. By the time we finished, the fourth week of 2 days and practice and stuff, every injury I had was just, going crazy on me. I was having doubts, whether I could even ever play again, to be truthful. And we get to the stadium and everything, and Coach Mack comes to me. He goes, "Okay, Rod, now this is what I need for you to do. They're going to have a lot of fanfare. They're going to have fireworks. They're going to have guys coming down and, from airplanes and parachutes. we're going to have an extra long time period, you know, between warm-ups and going back out. He said, and on top of that, we're going to go out in our black jerseys, and then we're going to come in and change to our new gold jerseys. And nobody else on the team knows about it. And I'm going, okay. Does that mean I'm playing? He's playing. You start, you're going to be the captain. It's like, okay.
Well, he dropped all that on you right before the game.
Yeah, he says, you got more experience than anybody out here. I think you can handle all of that, you know, whatever. And you're going to be the guy that's going to take them out there, you know, tonight, you know. So, you know, right there, you know, and, you know, that was it, you know. And I guess he knew a lot more about me, you know, sometimes than I knew about myself. And he knew that's how I respond, you know, to things. And that's what I do. So he's, you know, he laid it on me right then and there. And yeah, we went out, came back, and, you know, I stopped the guys before we came to the locker room. I said, all right, let's go in and see what we got, you know. And they had, the only thing that wasn't finished in that stadium was our locker room. So we had just fold out metal chairs to sit on, and our new jerseys were laid out on our chairs and everything. So, you know, we put those new jerseys on. You know, the coaches left out the room and said, all right, Rod, you know, say something to the team and take them out there. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I said, look, you know, I was ready to give it up. My man, Ken Hammond, wouldn't let me give it up. You know, he was more worried about me than he was himself. I said, that's how we're going to win this game. It's going to be hot. These guys are going to be good. But if you don't worry about yourself and worry more about your guy that's next to you, we're going to win. We're going to beat these guys. This is our stadium. They built it for us. Let's do it. I mean, we had, you know, some guys out there that were ready to play. You know, Joe Staley and, you know, Ken Hammond, you know, Andrew Coleman, man. And, you know, I mean, it was just great. You know, I was so impressed with the offense, with, you know, Alomar and, you know, Van Heffen, you know, running the ball and so forth, man. I mean, it was like the first time that I actually could sit on the bench and not have to run back out on the field, you know, after about 3 or 4 downs playing defense. You know, we got to like a 3rd and long, and, you know, I'm throwing my helmet on like, all right, I'm ready to go out there. And all of a sudden, I guess Alomar's catching the, you know, first down and stuff. I'm like, whoa, okay, I can sit down for some more. And we were marching, you know, back and forth on the field. And I said, all right, you know, this is it. We're going to win this game.
That's
I had a good feeling about it right then and there. And, you know, I started trying to play as good as I could. But, you know, they were a good team. And it was the fact that we just had a very good team all the way around. You know, Wayman was out there just catching passes on guys and stuff, you know. And, man, I was very impressed with that offense.
Well, Rod, that's certainly a special day in Vanderbilt football history. But you just gave us a glimpse as to why you were named 2-time captain. That speech that you just relayed to us speaks leadership all through it. And I'm just fired up sitting here listening to you. And it's been 40 years since that game. Now, I want to tell you, fast forward to 1988. We're playing Florida at home. They're a top 10 ranked team. We go out wearing, Dwayne, you're going to have to help me, was it the white or the black jerseys? We came in before we went back out for kickoff and changed into gold jerseys. We beat Florida that game. Now, your jerseys were much cooler looking than ours. Ours looked like, I don't know, lemonade yellow. They were horrible. But we ended up beating them. That was Emmitt Smith didn't play that game, but he was on that team. But that's the only other game that I know at home where we switched jerseys pregame versus going back out for kickoff and actually won the game. Also, Rod, we got Mark Johnson, one of my teammates. Stump is in the house. Brian Badger is with us. Tim Bryant is also watching with us. So thank you, fellas, for tuning in with Rod Gurley. Man, that's a special day right there, that Maryland game. It sure is.
It was.
Now, Rod,
we went back into the, you know, after the game was over, we went back, you know, into the locker room, but nobody left the stadium. You know, the stadium was just as full as it was from the beginning. Coach Mack said, "Look, we need to go back out there. We need to go back out there." And
Nobody wanted to leave such a great
nobody wanted to
atmosphere.
leave. So yeah, Jim Bronner was standing at the door, and he's like, "Gurley, lead him back out there." And I'm like, well, Jim's at the door, and he's gonna be lead. I said, "Jim Bronner, let's take him back out there." And Jim busted open the door. We all busted back out there, man. Ran back on the field, man. They were still cheering us on and everything. Man, the fans had a great time.
Yeah, that is certainly one of the more memorable games. And I know later that year you guys also beat Ole Miss, Memphis, and Chattanooga and lost a heartbreaker to Tennessee, which concluded your Vanderbilt career. Now I know you got your degree in '82 and went into education. Did you ever consider professional football?
Well, like I said, by that time, I felt like I had already played professional ball. I was busted up by some of the best, teams in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was a lot of controversy in the NFL during that time period. I think the next year they went on strike.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I did try out for the Chicago Blitz and Birmingham, I believe, on the USFL.
Mm-hmm.
But something about I don't know. I ran into a coach up in Chicago that just reminded me of some knucklehead, stuff, and I thought, you know what, this might be, I don't know that I want to get addicted to this football at this level.
Mm-hmm.
I'm already, been hurt enough times, and I'm already playing, with after surgeries, and I thought if I get addicted to football at that level, I would be that guy getting a surgery after a surgery and coming back out to play, and just not wanting to quit ever, And so I went ahead and, I didn't make any teams at that time, and I didn't want to do much on the USFL. They weren't offering me any real money to play at that time. I thought, I got a Vanderbilt degree. I can work a couple of jobs and make some good money, until I could find a really good job and so forth. And I started getting into working with the kids, and I really did like that. And that just kind of solidified my decision to just go ahead and leave the football alone.
Well, as you and I talked before we went live, it's quite admirable for any person who undertakes a profession of being an educator. And I applaud your decision to jump into that field. But as is shown tonight with your personality and the way that you think about people and others, you didn't just jump into education to educate regular kids. You've worked with the exceptional needs children, the exceptional education children for many, many years before retiring. And that's as dedicated of a job as an educator, I think, as there is. And I'm asking a question of you, and I'm not making light of anything that we've talked about tonight, but what part of playing team sports translated in for you to be able to do your job as a special education, special needs educator for all these years? Was there any part of playing team sports that helped prepare you for any of that?
Well, I mean, if you're going to be a teacher in any way, any capacity, I mean, it's not a job that you're getting rich at or anything. You have to be dedicated, And I've always told anybody, if you're going to play football, you just have to be dedicated. It's not a sport that you go out there and you haphazardly play. There's an injury waiting at every moment. There's pain, there's misery, there's blood, there's guts. Mm-hmm. And, you have to come back time and time again, from defeats or injuries or whatever, to try and give it your best. And so it takes a lot of dedication. And, being able to transfer that dedication, to kids that are down on themselves, don't feel like they can do things as well as other students, that have emotional problems, that have bad situations at home and so forth, and being able to give them a sense of you can make it, and a sense of pride in themselves, and something to tell them, look, if you give it your all, if you put what you have in it and believe in yourself, you will get there. Forget about what anybody is saying about you or writing about you, or where you were last year. I'm telling you right now, you can do this. You stick with me, you practice this, you work on this, and you'll be a better student, the next year, and then you'll realize that you can do this. Mm-hmm. And so trying to, give those kids that same type of feeling that you have to as a coach to give athletes, every day when they're doubting themselves, when they're not starting, when they're not the strongest or not the fastest, it's gotta be something about you inside that tells you you can do it, and you end up being that guy that can do it, or the girl that, that out races anybody or swims or plays basketball, because you did believe in yourself and didn't allow your critics or situations to set you back in your mind.
Rod, I'm noticing a pattern here. A pattern in that you have been a leader each stage of your life. And what I mean by that is those 2 years that you were captain, you're able to get your teammates to believe in themselves, to believe in the others who are playing alongside with them. You're motivating. And you certainly did that as an educator for all those years. But you haven't stopped, even though you're retired from your educator job. I bet you're as busy now as you probably ever want to be. And that's what's leading us to a very important aspect of something you've been the backbone of for the last several years. And that's not only organizing the pioneer Black football players from 69 to 79 who played for Vanderbilt, not only bringing that community together, connecting everybody, communicating with everybody, but then organizing them and getting recognition with on campus with the athletics department. And I'm going on and on about what you've done because I know you're not going to promote it, but that's why I truly wanted you to be on here tonight to share your journey. And I want to talk about those pioneers who can no longer be heard. You've identified to me that there's 60 men who played during 69 to 79. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. And that 13 of them are no longer with us. And we'll go through their names in just a minute, but not just on my program where we've had some roundtable, awesome discussions, and others who have been guests. There's been about 15 or so who've been on the show so far, and I'd love to have them all. But I want to back up. I want to talk about you organizing that first event on campus a few years ago. Why did you do it, or why did you help put it together? And what was the significance? What was the importance of having that on campus a couple of years ago, Rod?
Well, for a lot of years, even stretching back into the 90s, I had concepts and visions, and I wanted to pull a lot of the former football players who were Black together to form a group that we would unite and work together to be a positive force in the city. We had the name, we had already, were well known, and we all, there were such great talents, and I would try to get guys together and form a group, and let's go do speaking engagements. Thrill Kill, the great artist and stuff. I said, Thrill Kill's gonna be doing art. We could speak. Let's go to the churches. Let's go to the schools. I would call some of the guys over to my school and have them talk with the kids that I was dealing with, and so forth. But some of the guys were playing pro and different cities and stuff, and we started. Some of us started coming to Vanderbilt to be on different committees for the Alumni Association or the Black Culture Center, and get involved with Vanderbilt. So there's enough of us that were here to be able to do that. And some of us were diligent about it, and others were just kind of around. But I never could really get us to form a formal group and do things. But when you get a few decades on down, um, some of the guys that already passed away, that had passed away early, which was Ronald Hale, Kimmy Weaver, that I had passed away early. And then when Perry Wallace passed away, they had a ceremony for him at Vanderbilt, and I recognized that there were no alumni athletes there. And that struck me. Why not? Why were we not called in and made sure that we were there? And there was plenty of times that Perry came to the campus before I even knew a lot about him, that I didn't know. But then when I did know him, he would come to the campus, and again, it would be a notice in general, but there was no collective effort to pull in the former Black athletes to join in with him. And so when he passed away, I wanted to see more of us there at the ceremony. Another one of our friends passed away. Ronnie Myrick passed away, and another guy passed away, Lester Mack. And I thought, wait a minute, neither one of these guys have come back to Vanderbilt. Once they left, they were gone, and that was it. And they did great things, and they were great athletes. And I wanted to make sure that wasn't going to happen anymore. As I had to go to the school and talk to them and explain to them that being a Black athlete at Vanderbilt, as well as so many other schools in this country during this time period, was not easy. It's not easy. And I know for sure that as we get older, Vanderbilt is in our hearts, in our minds, and we experience a great deal of emotions on both sides of it. We're happy to have been in school and been comrades with our teammates, but some of the guys, had some bitter feelings. Some of the guys were not successful to the point that they wanted to be. They didn't feel that their time at Vanderbilt was what it should have been. And it was hard for them to understand that whatever time that they put in was valuable. And it led to what's going on campus now. And they didn't understand how well they were loved and respected by their comrades. I needed for the school to understand this and call these Black athletes back and let them know that the school understood that they had went through a lot. But to be able to show these ladies and these guys what is going on this campus now and what it has led to from what they experienced when they were there, and to give them a sense of pride and a sense of understanding. What you did led to this, and we appreciate that. And you're loved and you're valued, and we want your kids, your grandkids, to know this. I had to do that for the Black athletes, but I've spent enough time on campus that I wanted to make sure that all of the football players, alumni football players, were receiving their due honor and so forth. So I had already been working, with different coaches as they came to make sure we had a tent there. So the former football players could come with their families and have meals before the game and so forth, and come up with different things to try to get the different coaches to come in to recognize that the former football players of Vanderbilt were being ignored. We were not being treated as well as we've seen at other schools. But with this special group of Black athletes, I definitely had to let it be known to the school that there was some healing to be done. There was some reconciliation. There was a lot of love that needed to be poured into that group. And it had to start now. And I felt that if I felt that way, then I was going to have to do something about it. I couldn't allow it to go any further because that would be a travesty. I had to do something.
How many such reunions have now taken place, and how impactful have they been?
Well, we've had 2022. We tried to do one in 2020, but the pandemic stopped it. So we had to wait. And we came back in 2022, and we brought some guys back. And then, of course, just earlier this month, um, we're able to get 40% of the guys to come back on both occasions. There's always going to be some situations where, guys get ill or there's some family emergencies and so forth. So, there's going to be guys that are not able to come, but it's also still a situation where I'm trying to work and overcome some feelings there on another, 40% of the guys to get them to come back to the school and feel what it is that I'm trying to get them to feel, to have their families recognize, what they did as some of the first Black athletes here. So it's not a job that I feel that it is complete by any means, but it's a start, and the awards are there, and I want those awards to matriculate down to their grandkids and nieces and great nephews and so forth, because that's what history is about. And so this is a Black history thing and a Nashville history, Vanderbilt Black history. So it's very impactful to all kinds of people, whether it be the family members, whether it be the student body, to be able to see what these Black athletes did. So when we come back in 2 years, we're going to really expand out and make sure that we have the basketball, the baseball players, some of the other, sports included in this. We just had to kind of get started, and I had to make sure that the school understood the power of it and the necessity of it. And it's still there, but it's not an easy job to overcome some of the feelings that some of the Black athletes had left with. But I do try to get them to understand, don't look at Vanderbilt, look towards individuals that might not have done you well, but the school itself gave you an opportunity to go to school, and you can't beat that. Yeah. You can't beat that. They offered you that scholarship, the opportunity to come here and go to school. And, once you get to that point, you have to kind of take it as it comes on how you came out individually, because everybody has to follow their own path. But the school is there for you, and it's here for you now.
I don't even know where to begin, because I'm so impressed with what you've helped to organize, the reason behind it, the necessity behind it. So many others of the pioneers, I'm sure, have very similar feelings that you do, but I'm hoping the more of these reunions that you have on campus, it creates more engagement of conversation, and hopefully for those who haven't allowed their hearts to heal or allowed themselves to be back into the fold will be reached, will be touched by what you're doing. So anything that I can do, anything our group, this Facebook group can do, Rod, we'll do to assist with that. But I don't want to conclude talking about the pioneers without, I want to mention, I'm going to call them out if it's okay with you, those 13 pioneers who are no longer with us, but they may be gone from this earth, but they're certainly never going to be forgotten. for their contributions and the men who they were. And I hope I don't skip any, so please forgive me if I do. Drew Coleman, Gregory Dandridge, Thomas Gilbert, Ronald Hale, William Hart, Van Heflin, Lester Mack, Jesse Mathers, Frank Mordica, Ronnie Myrick, Joseph Reynolds, Lonnie Sadler, Kimmy Weaver.
Yes. And we were able to get family members of 10 of those guys in the house for our weekend. So we had family members for a majority of those guys. I think Lester Mack's family was not able to come. Frank Mordica's family were going to be here, I think, this week because he's being inducted into the Hall of Fame. So they were not present. And William Hart's family was not present. But all of the other guys had representatives, family members that had come to receive their awards. And what I've told Vanderbilt is this, that every time that we do these events, whatever we award for that particular time, whether it be a medal or plaque or anything, we will put their names of the deceased on those awards, and we will invite their family members to come and accept those awards. Because I want that to be something that at some point a great nephew or son or grandchild to come and receive this, so that this history is not forever forgotten.
Additionally, as I said earlier, about 15 of the pioneers have been on Conversations with Commodores. And this is my public invitation to any of those others who haven't told their stories or haven't been on, but want to come on and join me to share their journey, to share their stories. They're certainly welcome. Just get in touch with me, get in touch with Rod. He knows how to get in touch with me, and we will make it happen. And Rod, we've got just another minute or two, and I so appreciate you sharing about the efforts of the pioneers and what you've done, and many others. I know that you're not a one-man organization, but you certainly are as you do, you're leading the organization. So thank you for all of that involvement with the pioneers. And frankly, thank you for just showing up, because isn't that just part of life? Just showing up to those things and participating.
Yeah, we have a few guys that come to the meetings. Dennis Harrison and Wayman Buggs. I get Walter Overton in sometimes. Chris Taylor, he is very diligent about coming to meetings and sharing his opinion and so forth. So we have a committee that I'm all time pulling at them. Let's meet, and they're very busy. So me being retired, I could be a little bit more consistent, but they help me out a lot, and they definitely deserve a lot of credit. Thrill Kill has been doing such great artwork, for us and everything, and he's been working with me since the first reunion a couple of years ago. So I'm going to be looking for some more guys to get involved, and hopefully we'll get some basketball players. I'm pulling at Kathy Bender, and we'll see what Charles Davis is doing. So we're going to try to get some more people involved in pulling off the next one.
Rod, the meetings that you're speaking of, these are the pioneer organizational meetings.
Yes.
And this is geared for those Black athletes right now, football, but you're expanding sports, who played from 69 to 79. Am I correct about that time period?
Yes.
Is there
just to kind of have a certain decade there, and
Mhm.
You know, I know that there are going to be black athletes, you know, in the 80s. And what I would love for them to do is start looking at, you know, their group and start thinking about what happened and how things were for them in the 80s and try to solidify and have a camaraderie for themselves.
Mhm.
You know, but we definitely have some guys that we went into the 80s, you know, playing with Tim Bryant. We had Geno Winters, who came down from Chicago. So I always invite those guys, you know, who came in, you know, in 80, 81 to come in and join, because we played right on, you know, through those 2 years, a couple years with them, and they're very much a part of us. So I'm hoping that they kind of see what's going on and start pulling some of those guys in the 80s together and start looking at some collective thinking there about how they can you know, keep their group cohesive and communicating with each other.
One of the beautiful things about playing team sports, whether it's middle school, high school, college, pros, is you have a band of brothers during that time period that you're an active athlete. And that's what our Facebook group is about, is bringing the community of Commodores together of all decades. That's what Rod is helping to organize, those pioneers from 69 to 79. It's all about community. It's all about getting together and just fellowship and camaraderie and telling some half truths. Sometimes there's a grain of salt that's actually true, but it's all brings a smile to your face when you hear the same story for the 50th time. And frankly, that's all part of quality of life. And Rod, I can't heap enough praise to you tonight, my friend. I thank you for your friendship over the last couple of years. Not only you've enriched my life, but you have enriched the lives of so many others. And that's what these conversations are so important. That's why I do them, is to share the oral history of the Vanderbilt football program. It doesn't matter if you played no plays or if you were an all-star and went into the pros. That does not matter. It's what's off the field and that connectedness. So, Rod, thank you, my friend. You just keep doing what you're doing. You rely on us in this group if you need any help, communication wise, transportation wise, you name it. We got you.
All right, thank you very, very much. I appreciate you. And I love all you guys out there. Y'all know that.
They do, and they love you as well. And guys, please keep coming back on Tuesday nights. We got a whole bunch of Commodores. I'm getting them lined up through May and June already. So we got some great shows and great Commodores coming up. You guys anchor down.